kids don't remember the one-off big deal thing. They remember family traditions. So if your family serves at the homeless shelter every Thanksgiving morning from 8 to 11 while your turkey is in the oven, and you did that every year consistently, and you laughed and you went and you did all of that, that's the thing they're going to remember about Thanksgiving.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. I'm a summer camp director, writer, and speaker, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents over the past 3 decades. My husband Steve and I are raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 15 to 25. So my interest in raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults is personal as well as professional. In episode 108, I'm chatting with Natalie Silverstein. She's an author, volunteer, and passionate advocate for family service. Natalie is the New York area coordinator for Doing Good Together, a Minneapolis-based nonprofit with the mission of helping parents raise kids who care and contribute. Natalie is a frequent writer, speaker, and consultant on the topic of family and youth service. In this episode, we're chatting about her book, Simple Acts: The Busy Family's Guide to Giving Back. Today on the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, I am so excited to welcome Natalie Silverstein, author of Simple Acts: The Busy Family's Guide to Giving Back. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Thank you for having me on. This is really exciting.
Yes, I'm so glad we are connected and we had a chance to chat before we started recording. And you have a camp connection too.
I do. A camp connection is that my youngest daughter goes to camp up in the Berkshires. And over the summer, I had been, posting about the book. It had just come out. And I tagged her camp in a photograph of my daughter doing the swim-a-thon, where they raise money for the National Camp Association to help children get to camp who can't afford to do so. And I tagged camp, and I got a phone call one day. I was worried that my daughter was hurt or ill, but she was fine. And they said that they had seen the tag and they thought the book was fabulous, and it was really supporting their mission of giving back and teaching kindness and service and charity. And they had asked if they could purchase a bulk of the books to give away to all camp families at the holidays. So I was really touched by that. I also was really gratified that I had chosen a camp for my daughter that clearly held the same values and had a mission that was really in line with what our family's mission is, which is helping others and being kind.
Well, I just loved that story. And I love that you have found that the camp industry and many camps share this mission of teaching kids values, way beyond just the recreational skills and things that they're doing at camp. And, you mentioned even in the book, Camp Kindness Day, which is something that I think started in 2018. And my camps participated in, a lot of camps have, but it's trying to shine light on the fact that kindness and social skills and giving to others is a big part of the philosophy of many camps. So it's great that you experienced that firsthand with your daughter's camp.
Absolutely. And I think what your book portrays perfectly, and it's such a great book, is that all of these life skills that kids get at camp, and one of them is getting along with others, being kind to others, including other people. All of those things are the values that parents want to demonstrate and model at home. And so when you send your child away, your hope is that the camp is also doing this for you, and that all of these things are things they can take and they can incorporate into themselves as they move through the rest of their school year. It's really hard, I think, schools, and I'm very gratified that I think many, many schools and academic settings now, you talk about this in your book, instead of it being an anti-bullying campaign, have it be a let's all be kind campaign, a kindness campaign. I have seen this across the board in all of my kids' schools, and I think that that is so important. But let's be honest, they are focused on academics, and they have a service learning program, or they should, but that tends to be like kind of checking a box for them, right? And so I do believe that this work begins at home. with very young children, and that anything we can do to incorporate these acts of kindness and service into camp life, into extracurricular activities, and most importantly, into the things that we do with our children on our weekends, in our free time, is really so important. And it kind of just creates this foundation, this moral base for these kids from which they grow. I talk a lot about prioritizing. We all prioritize so many things in our kids' lives, right? Everybody will give you a laundry list of extracurricular activities and tutoring and sports and ballet and instruments and all of these things. We don't necessarily prioritize taking time out to say no to some of those things with intention, and saying yes to service and acts of kindness and volunteering together. And I do think that that's important and special time, and it's living our values. It's demonstrating our values to our kids by showing them what we think is most important.
Absolutely. And it's a partnership. I mean, it starts at home, and then you try to find, places like schools and religious organizations and camps that also support and reinforce those values that you're trying to teach your kids, because we can't do it alone. And the school can't do it alone, and the camp can't do it alone. But if we're all trying together to promote these same things, it works so much better. And I think our kids turn out a lot better too. Natalie, tell a little bit about your background, because it's quite interesting what you do now and how you got interested in this topic of the importance of focusing on service and giving back.
Sure. Well, my educational background is in healthcare administration. I have a master's in public health. So out of school, I worked in managed care companies, insurance companies, physician practices, hospitals. That was all really interesting work back in the early 2000s. After I started my family, I moved here to New York City. I met my husband, and we had, a couple young kids at home. I started to work from home a little bit, consulting. It just got really difficult, as it often does with 3 young children, to get out into the office, into the workplace. So I stayed home for a little bit. And during that time when I had young kids, my children are now 18, 16, and almost 12, I was really frustrated by the lack of opportunities that I could find in our community to do service with my kids. I sort of instinctively knew, as I think all parents know, that doing service, acts of kindness, helping others, is a really wonderful way to grow empathy and compassion and open-mindedness in growing children and young children. And I was dumbfounded that I live in New York City, a city of like 8 million people with countless nonprofit organizations and lots of need. There's a tremendous amount of wealth here, but a tremendous amount of need. I couldn't believe that I just could not find really meaningful, engaging volunteer opportunities for me and my young children. So I thought, well, I'll create some. I'll create a website. I'll create a resource. That's not really my strength in terms of creating a website. I was noodling around. I sort of stumbled upon Doing Good Together, which is a national nonprofit. It's about 15 years old. It's based in Minneapolis. A woman named Jenny Friedman started that organization. And they have a really very simple, beautiful mission, which is helping parents raise kids who care and contribute. Period. It's like so elegant. And I just fell in love with their website. They had so many wonderful resources, but they had a monthly listing that they sent out to subscribers in Minneapolis of family-friendly volunteer opportunities that they curated. And so I reached out to the founder and I said, I would love to sort of franchise what you're doing. On a volunteer basis, I'd love to do this in New York City. If you could sort of package it up and teach me how to do it and push it out into the world. And I would be in charge of finding my subscribers, which was organic. And of course, I have thousands of subscribers now. Word of mouth was really powerful. And of course, Jenny wrote back almost immediately and said this had been her dream for a long time, which was it was one of those sort of magical moments where all the stars aligned. She really had hoped to take her concept and move it out to the rest of the country. So I was the first to do that. Now we have 8 or 9 communities all across the country, Boston, Seattle, Silicon Valley, Baltimore, where there are people like me curating this family-friendly listing, which is pushed out to subscribers all across the country. So that was my journey to this day. Of course, in the meantime, over the 7 years I've been doing that, I was asked to go and speak at schools and at temples and churches and Girl Scout troops because I kind of de facto became the family volunteering lady. Like I became the kindness gal, like, oh, I need a volunteer activity. My kid needs to get some hours, or my kid has a bar mitzvah coming, or where should I donate all of this extra stuff I've got? Or, I just became this Google of this information. And I thought, well, people obviously want this information and they would use it and they would do more of this work with their kids if they had a really fun, easy, accessible, practical guide. And so I came up with the idea for the book, and here we are.
And it's really, I have to say, it's so accessible, the book. It's not very long. You have it's basically like essays kind of explaining the importance of it, and then lots of resources and so many ideas. And I have to say, so one of the things, I feel some guilt, I will say, because my kids are older now, and I do not feel like I wanted to do more volunteering. And with our 5 kids, I found it really challenging for those reasons that you said. Things were either like, like my oldest would be 10 and my youngest was an infant. That was awkward because you can't bring the infant. And then the other thing that I have found is we would do kind of one-off events, but I would be like, oh, that wasn't that helpful. Like we'd, deliver food for one day or whatever. And that just was felt like we never really got into a routine that was sort of a regular kind of. And then part of it too is I think, as individuals, we all have different things that kind of bring us flow. And I think just like with regular work, our volunteering should also be something that's in our wheelhouse, it's a thing that, wow, I really like doing this. And so it's fun. So the things that I've volunteered on, parent education things at a shelter and stuff like that is not really stuff that I could bring my kids along. And then my kids have all had a different thing. Like my daughter, one of them in high school got super involved with some volunteer thing through a homeless shelter and just kind of have done their own things. But some of my kids have not really found that. But what I love about your book and why I really recommend it just for all families, but especially for people with younger kids trying to figure out how to navigate, what can I do? I mean, some of the stuff you recommend doesn't even require scheduling anything. Yes. And I think that really appeals to me. And I think back, and for example, I didn't consider it giving, but one of the things I did with my sons is on Veterans Day, we would make cookies for our next door neighbor, who's a good friend who helps us out a lot, and invite him over. And we got little flags and wrote him a thank you note. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I never considered that part of this, but I love about your book, it's both. It's resources for kind of more formal volunteering opportunities, but it's also just, when your kid's having a play date, making some cookies and walking them over to the retirement facility next door. So I love that part. So tell me, one of the things I loved on page 70, you talk about keeping some kindness supplies. And this was something that, of course, in my book, I talk about sticky notes and just pens. What are some of the other tools? You talk about it in terms of going on a trip, but I was thinking for a lot of busy families, just keeping in your car.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and this gets back to the sort of, I don't have time. I can't possibly do it. I don't have 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon. Who does? That feels like a cop-out to me, right? We are all moving through our days interacting with other human beings. And you talk about this too. We're channeling each other in our books, teaching your child to make eye contact with the person behind the counter. And when you receive your change at the coffee shop, there's a little tip jar there that says college fund. I can promise you. And every coffee shop you go into, you hand those dimes to your child who puts them in the cup. The holding of the door, the making eye contact, the saying thank you to the postman or the UPS delivery man or the garbage collector. You talk about the sticky notes. I think that's a brilliant idea. Having paper and pencils and crayons on the dinner table. So instead of the children sitting there with their fork and their knife, pounding on the table, waiting for you to serve them dinner, like it's a restaurant, they can be creating cards for hospitalized children, which is literally a website, cards for hospitalized kids. Cards or letters for our active duty military or our veterans. I can give you, and they're listed in the book, thousands of places that will gladly take those for you any time of the year, but especially around holidays. You can collect your leftover Halloween candy and create a care package and send it to Operation Gratitude. There are things you can be doing at every moment, almost every day, that you're already doing some of these things, right? You're planning a birthday party for your kid. You're planning a play date for your kid. You're all going to the park. You're going to have a picnic. Why can't you take some garbage bags and have the kids spend 10 minutes, it's a game, cleaning up the park, and then we can talk about doing that, read a great book about it, and then we can play some soccer and we can have some cookies, right? Or the baking, like you said, snow days. We live in an area where we have snow days. My kid has a play date come over. What are we doing? If we want to bake, we are giving a plate of those cookies away to the nice men who are clearing the snow at our building, or we're writing a note and we're taking them next door to the nursing home. These are all, again, this is not rocket science. And I think this theme of the book and what I'm trying to relay is you don't have to change the world to change the world. You don't have to fly to Africa and build a school to make an impact on someone else's life. Your neighbor is elderly and can't get out in the snow, and you're going to the grocery store anyway. Why not go and ask them if they need a quart of milk, right? Or helping to clear the driveway or the leaves or whatever it is. A lemonade stand in the summertime. Kids love nothing more than to do that. I would suggest they do not need the $12 they're going to raise themselves. They should think about what is the charity that we're going to support and donate this money towards, and let them decide. I mean, you talked a little bit about your individual kids, and one found her passion or found her interest and maybe others didn't. I think exposing them to so many different opportunities like this, so many different social justice issues. Kids come home from school and say, we talked about immigration, we talked about homelessness, we talked about the Holocaust, whatever it is. I promise you, something that interests your kid, even soccer. If your kid is interested in soccer, obsessed with soccer, I promise you there are a dozen charities and even charities in your community that would accept and welcome your support and that your kid could get involved in and get really, really excited about. So follow their lead, follow their passion, but give them the opportunity, and also don't make it negotiable, right? This is what we do. This is how our family operates. So find the thing that really speaks to you, and then let's find a way for you to give back in that realm. And I think, it just builds on itself for kids. Absolutely. But you're absolutely right. The practical tips, I wrote this book because it was actually based on a conversation I had with a friend who said, gosh, I don't know how you find the time. I have two boys and they have soccer and they have hockey and they have, their instruments and they have tutoring and they have this. And I was like, well, gee, if you just had maybe tried one thing a month, one afternoon a month, they're just like, one thing a month. Are you crazy? I was like, what have you just said to me? What are you prioritizing? What are you demonstrating to your family is really important? I love this phrase. Instead of saying you don't have time for something, change it and say it's not a priority for me. And then see how that feels. And if you're talking to your children and you say, helping other people, I don't have time for that. No, if you say that's not a priority for our family, that you're teaching them, a lesson that you don't want to be teaching them, I think. I think every family would agree that this is not, we want to model our values. We want to live our values, and service and acts of kindness and just treating people the right way out in the world. And you talk about this a lot in your book. Instead of being mean back to the kid who is mean to you, thinking about what is it that they're going through that they feel so sad that they need to be mean to you, that maybe we can help them to feel better. I mean, this is what you learn at camp, and this is what you should be learning at home. And that's what I hope kind of comes through in the book.
Oh my gosh, it definitely does. And I feel so inspired. I was even thinking as you were talking just now that parents could keep something in their car. Like if they're driving around to all these activities, the whole, like you talk about leaving a poetry on a windshield or an encouraging note.
Which is a website. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Windshield poetry. Yeah. Yeah. You can download a little thing and a little form and you write a poem. You're sitting at the restaurant, you write a poem, you go outside, you stick it in someone's windshield. The whole notion of paying for the person behind you in the line, or, the person behind you at the toll. These are wonderful little things, but your kid sees you doing that. Or if there's a way that your kid can put the money in the toll box, right, for the person behind. I just think these are all things that people can be doing if they're mindful of it. It needs to be intentional, just like with everything in parenting, right? We need to be thinking about what is it that I can show my kid every day as we walk through our lives, that this is how we care about others because we hope that they care about us in the same way. And so, I really had wanted the book to create opportunities, birthday parties, milestone events, tiny things. When you lose, the first tooth or the first steps, all of these wonderful little milestones and experiences that families have, celebrate them, rejoice in them by sharing them with other people. doesn't that just like increase your joy tenfold by doing so? And going on a vacation, are there ways that you can give back to the community that you're visiting? We don't just go on this wonderful holiday that we've saved for, and who are the people that are serving us? What are the needs in the communities that we're visiting? And open your children's eyes to the world in that way.
Oh my gosh, so many great ideas. Well, I'm super inspired. And it's funny, as you're talking, I thought of a couple of other things. One is one of my daughters, who is currently a kindergarten teacher in Washington, D.C. She's always loved books and writing. She found a website, and I'll find out the name and put a link in the show notes, where when people need a letter of encouragement, they like submit something, and she writes letters to people she doesn't know just to encourage them. And it was reminding me of that. She found this on her own. And I just was like, that is so beautiful and so perfect for her. You know, she also loves kids. And before being a kindergarten teacher, she's been volunteering at Sunday school at church with kids. She worked during college. She did there were some kids, it was like an evening club kind of program. And so I'm thinking back that, these little practices, you start with something or you find something that like, wow, this is something I would really enjoy doing.
100%.
And then you'll keep doing it too. And it'll bring you a lot of joy too.
Well, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we know that, and the studies show that doing service, volunteering makes you happier, healthier. You quote all of these things in your book as well. But, the studies also show that people who volunteer with their families as children, if you volunteered as a child or a young person, you're more likely to do so as an adult. If you volunteer in conjunction with your family, it's like even higher percentages of that. Because again, it's like, this was communal. This was time we spent together. These are making I talk about this in the book. You're doing something really nice. Hopefully, you're helping others in the community. You're doing something substantive, yes, but you're also creating really nice, warm family memories. And I think that those are the things that people remember as adults. I quote someone in the book that says, kids don't remember a one-off big deal thing. They remember family traditions. So if your family serves at the homeless shelter every Thanksgiving morning from 8 to 11 while your turkey is in the oven, and you did that every year consistently, and you laughed and you went and you did all of that, that's the thing they're going to remember about Thanksgiving. Not the time you went to New York City to see the parade, right? Or, every Christmas you sponsored a family and you would buy presents for other people. I mean, holiday time is I think that's the one time of year that people really do say, oh my gosh, I can't with the presents and it's too much, me, give, I want. They do look for opportunities like that. I would say there are people in need in our communities every day of 365, 12 months a year. We can't just say, okay, Thanksgiving and Christmas are our times that our family does this. You can do things around Valentine's Day for our active duty military, around Mother's Day for mothers who are displaced or in domestic violence shelters, the 4th of July, Veterans Day, again, about our military, senior citizens. There's Camp Kindness Day in the fall. Here in New York City, we do service around 9/11 because we will never forget, and we will always do that and do nice things for our first responders. Halloween, great time. The boxes, that you can go around and collect change, or the candy that you can send to the military. So I do have, at the end of the book, as I'm sure you saw, I have a month by month sort of, here are your top 5 or 10 things in each month, ways that you can be thinking about other people, things that you might not have even thought of. And just ways that you can spread some kindness. Mother's Day and Father's Day and Grandparents' Day, those seem like Hallmark events. Those seem like, and sometimes they're very painful for people. There's so many nice ways. There are caregivers in your life, the school administrator, there's like school administration day or something, just to write a note. I'm not talking about expensive gifts. This is not about money. I really tried to make the book about acts of kindness and service, really without dealing with, writing checks or anything like that. There are so many little things that kids can be doing. You just have to keep your mind open to it and your heart open to it. And if you see on social media that, today is whatever, a special day, what can we do to make somebody else's day brighter, and celebrate National Cookie Day by baking cookies, as you said, and delivering them to your neighbor. So that was the hope with the book. And again, that you don't have to go out and do this huge, enormous, time-consuming, expensive, it's just little things, and they're like drops in a bucket, right? They add up and they sort of fill the cup of your child's emerging character. And this as a parent of 5 grown kids, it really does. It makes a difference in who they are.
Oh my gosh, so true. And I want to make sure I point out too, the book has a state by state recommendation as well. So I loved that. I've dog-eared a lot of the calendar ideas because I thought it would be fun to kind of promote through camp as well. But I also have always thought, and I don't know if you agree, that it's kind of fun to do things on just like not a special day, like bring some flowers or a plant to the school office manager.
Sure. Random acts of kindness. I mean, there's a whole foundation based on this, and it's a real movement. I love that it's becoming more of a thing. And I think it's a clear, direct response to sort of all of the negativity out there in the world, in our political world, in our media. I think that anything that we can do like that is really just keeping other people in mind. And again, you're going to the market anyway. Why don't you ask your neighbor if they need something, right? If you're going to the market and there's a big sale on dry goods and you know that the local food pantry, runs low in January, the food pantry is full in November and December. And imagine there are still hungry people in January and February and over the summer as well. When kids go away to camp and everyone goes on vacation, everyone thinks that there are no longer hungry people in our communities or homeless people. Of course, people suffer with the issues that they suffer with, every day. And so just keeping all of those things in mind and reminding your kids and saying, hey, gee, maybe what can we think about doing today when we hit the grocery store? Who might we be able to help out? And again, we're not talking about spending lots and lots of money. That's not what this is about. It's about mindfulness and keeping an open heart and an open mind and really just reminding your children to think outside of themselves, even very, very young children who have a hard time doing that sometimes.
I have a question. This is not in the book, but just what are your thoughts on, people are so into posting like every little thing. What are your thoughts on like not posting about because to me, it seems like if we're trying to teach our kids just true kindness or random acts of kindness, you don't need to take a picture of the note you've left on the car. Do you know what I mean? So what are your thoughts on that and the connection? Because to me, it seems like if you're trying to show other people and say, hey, look at how kind we are.
Right.
On a good note, it might share an idea with other people. So perhaps like in your setting on your blog and the Doing Good Together, it's helpful because it gives people ideas. In general, what are your thoughts about sort of recording and getting sort of, credit for your kindness?
Well, I think it should never, doing an act of kindness or doing, service or volunteering should never be about what I got in return, right? We all know that you get so much in return. You get almost more than the recipient, right? We know that. It makes you feel really great. And so I try and promote that to young people when I'm speaking to teenagers and stuff. Like this actually makes you feel good to do stuff for other people. We know this, the science behind it. At the same time, I don't think you want to record it or have it posted. And certainly young people shouldn't be doing that to be like kind of looking for a pat on the back. However, there is sort of a movement, and you even say it in your book, I think you quoted exactly, like kindness is cool. And if we can promote young people, instead of talking down or criticizing or making fun of on social media channels, which is what they do, if we can actually turn that narrative around such that we are, again, the put-ups as opposed to the put-downs, I think that can be very powerful. And in this next book proposal that I'm putting together in terms of teenagers, I really want to help them to think about ways that social media can promote the good, can spread the good. It's not just about this is what I went out and did today. Let me tell you about the organization that I helped and how you can help them too, and why what they do in this neighborhood or in this community is so important. Did you know that X number of children in New York City go to school hungry every day? And did you know that Feeding America has this program, or that this local organization has this program that provides food for these kids? So I went and volunteered for them today. Here's a picture of me doing the backpacks. But this is how you can get involved too, or this is why it's so important. I think there's the difference, right? And I follow a lot of these social media accounts that are literally just the positive report, positive stories about a young man who walks the woman home every day because he started doing it once and now he does it every day. Two people from very different communities, and they've created a bond. Those things make people feel better. But at the end of the day, I hope they're also modeling for young people that that's cool. He's getting attention for doing something good and kind and nice. I think that's what we all want to promote for sure.
Oh, I really like that. So you can do the thing, but I think when you're promoting if you take a picture, you're sharing about it, how can they get involved? Or what about even inviting your friends to join you? So, hey, I'm going to go over to this park to pick up trash today.
100%. Right.
Want to meet me there? So you could use a little twist on it. And then I just had another fun thought. So at camp, sometimes we try to do like kindness and giving things. And we've done a bunch of different things like crafts that kids can make to donate.
Once I love to sew. So one year I taught the kids how to sew pillowcases with really fun fabrics, and we gave them to the local children's hospital because they had a collection thing. But one of the things at camp, picking up trash. So we do the adopt a highway, but kids can't go do that obviously because it's on a highway. But we have like the orange vests and the helmets and the little pinchers.
Yes.
So sometimes we'll let the kids sign up to do like cleanup in camp. And if you give kids like a vest and a helmet and pinchers, it makes it like so much more fun.
It's an activity.
Yeah. Plus it's like safer than using the pinchers, especially if you're in a public place. You have to be careful because there might be.
No, of course they should be wearing gloves. Right.
But I just was thinking about how that takes an activity like, oh, go pick up trash, and just elevates it to, oh my gosh. And you take a picture of everyone with their orange vests and everyone feels all cool and stuff. So I think there's also ways to just kind of add the fun factor into.
Absolutely. And I talk about that in the Playdate chapter. Kids have Playdates every, I don't know about you, but my 3 kids, if I didn't have a Playdate set up, somebody was screaming, right? I had 3 Playdates going at all times where I'm driving people to Playdates. If I'm hosting a Playdate and these kids are already drawing or painting or making cookies or, whatever they're doing, that can absolutely have a service element or a kindness element built into it. And then even better, go for a walk in the community, and deliver those cookies to the local firehouse, and then you get a little tour, you get to meet the dog, you get to go down the pole, like whatever it is. These are all things that, this is all part of, making it social, making it fun, doing it with other people. Kids are inevitably going to find that it's more fun to do this with family and with others. You have 2 families, 3 families get together on a Sunday afternoon, go out for a picnic, bring a soccer ball, bring a picnic basket, do a little cleanup like you've just described, and then enjoy yourselves. Like it's just a win-win. It's not a drag. It's not, too much. It's not, oh my God. Like, we're all just so in our own heads a little bit. And yet we can still organize all of these other things. This is something that can be organized into the mix really seamlessly, really organically, without a lot of hoopla, without a lot of patting on the back. I do talk in the book, and I think you talk a little bit about it as well, starting with a children's book for very young kids to kind of center us on what we're doing here, why we're talking about this, opening it up for questions, letting them think about the topic, the social justice issue, if you will, that we're dealing with, doing the activity, and then having like a little rehash. I think it's super important for families to talk on the ride home. Like, what did we really like about that? What did we not like about that? Was that boring? What else could we do? And how might we, because we're not going to give up, right? We're never going to say, oh, we're never doing that again. What could we do differently? How could we help this person or this organization or this community in a different way? Can anybody think of some nice ideas? And that's how you get some investment and some buy-in from the kids. And again, gives them the opportunity to be like a little creative. I think the kids are, a lot more creative in this realm than we give them credit for. It's just the parents need to open that conversation and kind of keep it going. You have to keep it going.
Yeah. Well, I'm so inspired after reading your book, just even personally, like just some things that I want to start doing differently, just always having these things accessible, because I'm the kind of person, I think of ideas a lot. I'm like, oh, I should write this note to this person or invite my neighbor over for coffee or whatever it is. And then, my day goes on. I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. So I think that some of it is just getting the supplies together. If it's just a note to write.
And it's a little bit of preparation in advance for a ton of, great, good outcome later.
Absolutely. Well, Natalie, this has been just so great. I love your book. I hope many families pick it up and just get inspired, and just for little things that they can do, because like you said, it's just so important. We need to counter the negative and sort of the modeling that some of our kids are seeing. It's just, and like cyberbullying is at an all-time high and all this stuff. So gosh, if we can just get our kids to flip this and be more focused on what good that they can do and these little things that they can do to just like switch the direction here and make us a little kinder world.
Amen. And your book, similarly, I mean, the concepts that you're talking about, this is not, you have not reinvented the wheel here, but you're talking about basic human kindness, how to be a friend. If you want a friend, you have to be a friend, and you have to know how to be a friend, and being kind to others and taking care of your own belongings. All of these things, these life skills that we learn when we're out there at camp or at school or at our extracurricular activity, or how we're behaving in someone else's home on a play date. These are all tiny, as I said, drops in the bucket nugget of a child's developing character. I think the most important piece, and you talk about it as well as I do, if you're not modeling this behavior, if you are, screaming and yelling at the person behind the counter or the other driver in the car, the way that you show your child how you hold the door, how you greet the doorman, how you greet the postal worker by name, using a person's name is really powerful. And I think that, showing your kids that this is how we do it in our house, it sticks, but it has to be repetitive because that's the way things are with kids. Empathy is a muscle like anything else, and it has to be exercised. And I think service and acts of kindness is the way you do it.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, thanks so much for being on, Natalie. This has been terrific.
Audrey, thank you so much. Your book is terrific too. Thank you very much. I really appreciated talking to you today.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. For a summary of Natalie's and my conversation, including links to the resources that we mentioned, go to sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 108. If you'd like to receive a reminder when new episodes are released and other resources that I share in my weekly emails, text the word HAPPY to 345-345 to subscribe. I love hearing from listeners. For questions, comments, or feedback, you can write me directly at audrey@sunshine-parenting.com. I'm grateful to be on this journey with you, raising a generation of kids who become thriving adults.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.